Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new episode of the You Can Exhale podcast. And today I have Tania Fox, who is idea architect and strategic brand advisor. Tania helps a lot of entrepreneurs to find their passion and to monetize it. But what I love a lot about Tania, and I think she is such a great inspiration, is that she openly talks about her mental health struggles while helping other people reach their goals. Welcome to You Can Exhale Now, a mindful living podcast for the modern pace, hosted by Lesia Liu. This podcast is for anyone who wants to get more out of life without the burnout. Because when you learn to take proper care of yourself, you have more energy, a more positive outlook, and more gratitude for life. And because you cannot reach your goals if you're tired, overwhelmed, judgmental, angry, and feel sorry for yourself. Each episode, you will learn actionable strategies for self-care, mental health, productivity, better life-work balance, and happiness from coaches, therapists, and experts. Stop holding your breath. You can exhale now. Choose to be a more authentic version of yourself than you've been in a while. So, Tania, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. And like I said, you're such an inspiration for me. And tell us more about you and how you became an idea architect and what that is.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. It was it was an honor. And what does an idea architect do? An idea architect basically takes the ideas that other people have and structures them. So I work with a lot of creative thinkers who know that they want to put something out there, but they don't know exactly how to get it out there or how to structure it so it's attractive to clients or customers. So I help them basically, if you think of what an architect does, that's what I do, except instead of working with a pen, I work with a brain.
Awesome. So how do you help people to go about finding their idea and package their ideas and monetize it and really monetize their passion?
What I find a lot is that when you let people say what it is that they really want to be doing, they already know what their passions are. There's just so much pressure out there to get it right that people are afraid that if they say something, it's going to be the wrong thing, or we're going to think it's silly or stupid, or we're going to be offended by it or something. So the first thing is to just give people permission to be like, okay, whatever it is that you're thinking, first of all, there's a market for it. And second of all, there are people who are literally waiting for this to happen. So you can literally sell anything you can imagine. But more importantly, if you're thinking of it, that means there are other people out there who are missing it. So let's build it.
What I love about your digital presence and about your business is that you're really open about your own mental health struggles. And if you could speak a little bit more to that, and what made you speak up about it? Because, I would think that there probably was some fear around, if I have a depression, how can I help other people? If I need help myself, so to speak, quote unquote. So what made you share that? And it's really admirable, but was it difficult? Was it scary to do it? What prompted you to do that?
Yeah, for a long time, because of the stigma, it is very difficult to say, you see me as this bubbly person who's like the host of every party, but when I'm not here, I'm curled up in a ball in bed, So it is really hard to say that to people. And I lived a lot of years with not telling people how bad things were. And I thought for a really long time, because I worked in the service industry and I owned a bar, that it was just me crashing from being the life of the party, until I finally really understood that it was a combination of the two. It was that part of you that's also sort of introverted, and you need to recharge from these high energy atmospheres. But then there's also this thing that I have been going to therapy for since I was 6. So I've got anger, I've got abandonment issues, I've got, self-esteem issues. I've got all of these things that I grew up with, and they sort of snowball. And then on top of that, my entire family has a history of depression to the point where my grandmother's sisters were electroshock treatment. One of them almost had a lobotomy. So once you understand that this is a disease like any other, it is a symptom of other things as well. And once I started saying to people, I'm not going to be able to do anything after work, or I'm not going to be able to do anything for a couple of days after hanging out because I need that space to recharge, that began my healthy relationship with my unhealthy brain. I think what really happened is that there was a very, very famous marketer out there, and that marketer was making life look so amazing, so beautiful all the time. And I was like, but I know things about this person, and I know that life is not like this. I know that their life doesn't look like this. And so I opened up my Facebook account to public. And I was like, everything that I would share with my friends, I'm going to share here, because I never want somebody to come back to me and be like, I see her and what she's portraying out in the real world in video and things that are supposed to be portraying her real life is not what's really happening in her real life. And so it was a part of my transparency principle for life and business.
I think you've touched on so many points. Like I actually start dribbling down the things, I want to ask you after all of this. And it's interesting that you talk about stigma, right? Because there's definitely stigma around mental health. And now we know, like you've said, it's part of physical health, and people do not get in trouble, for breaking their limbs or for getting diabetes yet when your friend is anxious or depressed. That seems to, rub a lot of people the wrong way. And yet the interesting thing you said too is that you were life of the party. And that's not usually, your stereotypical depression person, right? Because of that, you cannot always say who is struggling really.
And I think that was another thing. A lot of my friends were shocked when I let them in to see what it looked like when I'm not outside with them. They were shocked. They didn't understand the depths of the darkness that I lived when I canceled plans with them at the last minute, or when they didn't see me for 2 weeks. They didn't know about it. And so when I finally admitted it, like, this is what I'm going through. When I cancel at the last minute, it's not so that I can go hang out with somebody else. It's so that I can literally just curl up in a ball, watch hours and hours of television and not be able to tell you what the hell I watched. Like, that's why. Because it was easier for me to disappoint you than to have to put on a face for everyone else. I think one of the things that is still a misconception about people with depression is that we look depressed. But the same thing, we don't look any more depressed than a diabetic looks diabetic.
Mm-hmm.
And it is not a physical attribute per se. It is not, it's not something that you're going to see on the outside if we don't want you to, or if we haven't even admitted it to ourselves. So this whole idea that, entertainers of all people, we're completely missing out on the fact that entertainers are almost by nature very prone to depression. Creative thinkers are very prone to depression. So that's where that really needs this. I think we need to stop with the you don't look depressed thing, and understand that just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not happening. I think a lot of people don't know how to talk to us when we're going through something that is either a depressive symptom or an anxiety symptom or anything on that spectrum. They don't know what to say, what to do for us. And I think it's really important. So I think it's super important for them to understand that the best thing that they can say is there anything I can do for you? Would you like me to stay or go? I think those are the questions.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ask me what's wrong. 9 times out of 10, I don't know. And if I do know, it's probably because it's a Thursday. Like, there is no, you know what I mean? But is there anything I can do for you? Would you like me to stay or go?
Yeah, that's really powerful. In our last conversation, you've mentioned an interesting idea, and I think it's absolutely true that, most people do not get therapy until they are in crisis mode. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that. Again, the stigma and the financial struggle sometimes and all of that. But I think that you kind of summarized it very well when you said that most people do not get therapy until they're in crisis mode. And a lot of people think that that's the time to get help, not prior to crisis mode, but right when you cannot take it anymore.
Yeah. And I think that that's also a part of the way that we're conditioned, that we don't go to doctors or anything like that until something goes bad, because we know it's going to cost us an arm and a leg, almost literally. So, so it's this privilege in the United States to be healthy in the first place. And somehow mental health is even more of a privilege. And until we wrap our heads around the idea, again, I'm just full of puns today, but I did not mean that, around the idea that everything about existing in these meat suits means that you have to do preventative medicine. And having a therapist or even a certain level of life coaching, there's a wide range of people who are trained to listen and trained to help us move past our barriers, our blocks, our traumas, our pain. But they need to also see this balanced view of who we are. They need to be able to see what we're like when we're not in crisis mode, because maybe they can help us identify the pattern, or they can at least help us identify how to deal with it. Did you notice that this is coming up each time you go into a black space? Or did you notice that this was coming up each time that you go, you go AWOL or whatever? So we need them to be objective observers of how we fall into crisis mode, not just that we're in crisis mode.
Yeah, I think that would help so many people to just uncover those patterns and see what's going on. And the interesting thing you said is preventative care, right? And a lot of times we think of therapy, again, as a crisis mode type of thing. It's not a preventative thing necessarily for a lot of people. And then prior to it, a little bit earlier, you mentioned something about space to recharge. And I think independently of whether you're introvert or extrovert, I think we all need space to recharge. Your phone needs to recharge, your car needs gas put in and stuff like that. But yet, especially in Western culture, I feel like we have this always on type of culture where, you just always have to be on. There's no really time or place to be off. People do not give it to themselves or to their loved ones and friends. Would you agree with that?
I do. And I think it becomes an even more important thing when you start introducing new people into your life. So when you have a significant other, or when you have children, or when you're the guardian of other people, or in a partnership with other people, it becomes less and less, for lack of a better word, convenient for you to take that time. And I have to say, my mom taught me one of the best tricks in the world, actually 2 tricks.
Please share.
Trick number 1 is go to the bathroom, tell people that you're pooping, because they will not come in if you say you're pooping. So that was trick number 1 for my mom. And trick number 2 for kids, my mom would tell me that the Jell-O wouldn't be ready if I came out of my room early. So she was like, you don't have to take a nap, but I do want you to take some downtime, to take some you time, play with your dolls, read a book, whatever you'd like to, and I'll come and get you when the Jell-O is ready. And then she would come with the bowl of Jello, because that was also my reward for doing that. And she was a single mom, so she needed that time really badly.
She needed that time, yeah.
And so that's how she would get an hour to herself, or actually she would get like 2.5 hours to herself. It was by making Jello the slow way.
But that is very smart too, because not only did she get the time she needed, but she also did not, I guess, offend you in any way or made you feel responsible that she doesn't have her own time, right? It was very respectful towards her kid as well.
Yeah, and she did make it into a thing, like, because kids don't want a nap. They have no idea what's coming when they're going to be begging for naps, right?
Yep.
so, so kids don't want a nap, but if you say to them, you can play with your toys if you want to, we're like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, no nap. And then they find us on the floor napping anyway. So, so they ultimately, adults always win. But these are the kinds of things that we can think about and that we can take advantage of in everyday life, like going to the bathroom so that you can just breathe in your office. I know that sounds weird, but nobody's going to say anything to you for having to go to the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who still go outside for a cigarette. Go outside and take a walk. If they're allowed to have cigarettes, you're allowed not to. And just learning how to find these little spaces in your day for yourself, because people are asking a lot of us. And even people in the healthiest of psychological states need some them time. And they're not afraid to ask for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yet we are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're spot on with the fact that even like a 5 or 10 minute break helps so much. I can even notice that with myself if I feel like I'm getting overwhelmed or stressed or I had an unpleasant conversation. If I can just zone out for 5 to 10 minutes, and like you said, just go outside and walk for 5 to 10 minutes, breathe some fresh air, look around, look at the trees and the birds, it definitely feels like something is reset inside of you in that moment. And then also, I think, aside from those 5 to 10 minutes, just recharging in general, I want to clarify for listeners, hopefully, recharging doesn't necessarily mean you just lay down like an innate object for hours. Recharging can be very active. Recharging can include going for a hike, running, dancing in your living room, whatever helps you like get that feelings, get those thoughts kind of out of your physical body is recharging. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. One of my favorite things, I'm terrible with time. I make what I call time confetti. Like, there are pieces of it everywhere. It looks pretty on the outside, but it's actually just scraps of paper that don't belong to anything. And so I hired this woman who is a professional time organizer. And one of the things that she did was she gave me these spaces in my day, because also it's been proved that we can't work really efficiently for an hour straight. What she would do is I would work sort of Pomodoro technique. So it's like 45 minutes on, 15 minutes off. And I could do whatever I want to with those 15 minutes. But I was like, I want dance breaks. And literally she put it in my schedule that like 3 times a day I have a dance break.
That's awesome.
And
you should all do that.
Seriously, and here's the best part of it is that she sets it in an alarm thing, because I need to be reminded that things are happening. And dance break time actually is a music alarm. It tells me that it's dance time. So it's literally, I don't have to do anything. I just have to stand up and start dancing.
That's great.
It is so great.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of apps, like I'm using a mindful app where you set a specific time frame, like every 3 hours or like every 3 hours, 10 minutes. So it's a little bit randomized. It like the gong starts making sounds on my phone, and that's kind of like my cue to either start breathing or to do like a little body scan, or to repeat my affirmations or whatever. So there are a lot of apps and they're all free, and you can just download it and basically you can make any sound you want, but I like kind of the gong sound because it's very mindful. It's very like
Hmm.
Eastern. And it
Yes.
definitely helps to start building that habit of checking in with yourself a couple times throughout the day. So I highly recommend that as well.
It's funny. I think I have the same app, and
Oh,
my
cool.
gong has a very long echo.
Yes, yes, it does.
And so I use the entire echo to inhale and exhale.
That's another great idea. Yeah. It even works if you're working in the office. If you hear that gong, just take a minute to yourself, take your hands off of the keyboard, look away from your screen, and just breathe for a minute or two.
There's also this entrepreneurial depression because we get so isolated in this digital age of
Yes.
entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
Many people that know and love us don't really understand what it is that we're trying to accomplish. So we don't have them to bounce ideas off of or just to be our cheerleaders, but informed cheerleaders. It's wonderful that my mom thinks that everything I do is brilliant, but it would be awesome if she understood what I did and still thought it was brilliant.
Right.
But
Yes.
I have people who do understand what I do. But there's this isolation. And then on top of that, it's not necessarily a fear of failure as the fact that failure is constantly looming over your head as a consequence of taking this risk. So we don't know what the future is going to hold. And usually that risk is assumed by somebody else. It's assumed by an employer. It's assumed by a larger client or something to that effect. And so
Mhm.
we're assuming that risk as well. That's, I think, where the fear of failure comes from. It's not that we don't believe that we can do what we said we were going to do. We're afraid that if we don't, all of that risk is going to come to bite us in the ass.
Absolutely. And I think it's also funny that we assume that, your traditional, in quotes, 9 to 5 job is safer than opening your own business or pursuing your passion, because obviously people get laid off every single day, people get fired every single day. The market can go down and you might be unemployed for a year or two, and yet for some reason we assume that it is safer than to bet on yourself.
Most of us are at will employees, so they can fire us at any given time for any reason. So
Mm-hmm.
there is no job security unless and until you create your own, because then you can always pivot. And that's where I come in and helping people understand that pivoting is okay, but it's also a way of attaining security.
We think about this entrepreneurship road as kind of work from anywhere, work from your home, work in your PJs and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we still need to talk to people and we still need the community. I found, that community is really important and really crucial in a lot of different aspects of our lives. Um, so
Absolutely.
by dreaming up of this like entrepreneurial lifestyle and working from home, um, really we are taking out that community part out of our day. So how do you go about that? How can you build a community? How you can still um, maintain like a healthy balance of alone time for focused work versus brainstorming ideas with other people, maybe hearing, criticism, constructive criticism for your ideas and stuff like that.
I think there's two ways that we can do that. And one is to, if you're the kind of person that does not thrive in an atmosphere with other people, and it's really important that that you make that distinction. Am I not able to work because there are other people around? Or do I just prefer to work alone? Because if it's just that you prefer to work alone, you can work alone in a crowd. You can isolate yourself pretty easily and still get the energy of people around you that you would have gotten in an office environment. If the thing is you legitimately can't work with other people around you, then yes, it totally makes sense for you to work from home. But take yourself out for lunch. Even if that means packing your lunch and taking it to the library, take yourself out for lunch. You need to have other people around you during the day that are not people in your home. So one of the things that I am really conscientious of is I work from a library once a week. And I also know the people who work in the cafes and stuff that I work from, even though they're not co-working cafes, but I make a point of knowing the people behind the counter. And so that's two things that I would say. I would say that one thing is to make sure that you're in a social environment and make yourself a regular there so that people do recognize you, so that when you walk in, you do get that smile of recognition from other people, even if it's a librarian, even if it's, other people who come there every day to work. And if you do it at set times, you'll become a regular and people will recognize you, but you'll also recognize them. When there's too many people at a table, that person may save a spot for you because they're expecting you.
So I wanted to ask you one more thing before we wrap up, and that is the idea of box of awesome. Can you tell our listeners what box of awesome is and how it works and what's the goal behind it?
Every so often I come up with these incredibly supportive but really, really weird ways of keeping our self-esteem up, of making sure that we don't get caught up in our own heads. And one of those things was the box of awesome. And the box of awesome is literally when you take things that people have said about you, whether it's in a text message, if somebody sent you something in a private message, if they've written you a birthday card, if somebody wrote you a love note, whatever it is, you take these awesome things that people have said about you and you put them into a box. And then when you need that moment of, just a little, you know what? I have human fans. I have people who are just fans of my existence. You shake up the box and you pull out a random thing because you didn't ask these people for these things. They said them of their own volition. So they must be true. And if they're true, then you have to believe them. And when you need to believe that something is awesome about you, you go back to that person who said something that was true. And so that's what the box of awesome is. It doesn't necessarily have to be a box. It can be a jar of awesome. It can be, a hat of awesome. It could be a jug of awesome. The vessel itself doesn't matter, but it does matter that they have to be tangible. You've got to either have them on paper, print them out, some way that you're able to reach in and pull something random out and hold it and look at it and know somebody said this about you and you didn't even ask for it. Somebody said this about you by you just being you. Tiniest thing is such a huge springboard.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it can really light up your day when you're feeling down, or you don't even have to feel really down, but just when you need that a little extra push of awesome.
One of the things that I used to do because of my own self-esteem stuff is that when people would give me some awesome, I would tell them to shut up. So if somebody was like, "You're really good at that," I'd be like, "Oh, shut up." Or, "You're really beautiful. Shut up. Wow, you're really smart. Shut up." And then one day somebody stopped me and they were like, "That's really insulting." I was like, "I'm from New York. We tell everybody to shut up." And they were like, No. Basically what you're saying to me is my opinion doesn't count. And if you would actually say that to my face, if you would actually say, if I say to you, that was really smart, if you would say to me, I don't care about your opinion, then you can tell me to shut up. But if that is not something that you would say, then you just have to sit there and take it.
Yeah, a lot of people do not know how to accept compliments, but we always think of it, like one way that compliment was sent and we didn't receive it, but we do not actually think about the implications for the other person, for the stranger. Yep.
It's one thing to disrespect yourself, but you're actually disrespecting that person. You're negating their opinion. You're negating what they think.
Mm-hmm.
No, you don't really think that. I'm going to tell you what you really think. No, you don't know what's wrong with me. I'll tell you what's wrong with me. There's something wrong with you that you think that there's something right with me.
I hope more people hear it and think about and become more mindful of how they accept or decline compliments, and if there are better ways
But I
to
think
handle
it's not
those.
just the compliments though. It also feeds into your box of awesome isn't based on your opinion of yourself. It's based on their opinion of you.
I agree. Well, I think this was beautiful conversation. There's a lot of really great tips and ideas, and I hope more people get to making their box of awesome.
I hope so too. It really, you'd be amazed at how many things you forgot that people said about you in the most wonderful way. But thank you so much for having me on to talk about this.
Thank you, Tanya, and thank you for being such an inspiration for, talking so openly about the struggles and the tips of how to overcome it.
Actually, I have a confession. Okay, here's something that I almost never talk about, although there is a video for it. So you're welcome to share the video. So in 2013, I had a full-blown breakdown. At the time, I was already dealing with my normal bipolar 2, but in 2008, I know this sounds crazy, but in 2008, I had a friend commit suicide. My bar was shut down. My therapist was murdered, and my mother had breast cancer in very quick succession. This was like 1 6-month chunk of life. And I didn't get to feel my feelings because my job at that moment was to take care of my mom, only parent, only child. So it wasn't until 2013 that I was able to just finally break. And so I did. I broke. And when I came out of it, one of the things that I realized was, first of all, I needed a new job because I burned everything. I burned every bridge that I had as a contractor in that moment because I just couldn't finish anything. Legitimately could not finish anything that was handed to me. I was a translator at the time, and you hand me a 500-page book. Ordinarily, I would have been able to get that done in 2 months. It was taking me 6 months, almost a year, to finish things. And when I started coming out of it, that's really when I started to be really, really, really open about what was going on. And there are times where I show up on the live stream in that state, and I can see it. I know what I look like, but I've also made a commitment to showing up. But that's just me. People know that something is happening with me, so I'm able to go on my live stream and say, this is not a good day, but I wanted to show up for you guys and just let you guys know something. I've created a brand that enables me to be free with how I'm feeling. Not everybody has that luxury. And not everybody has the luxury of reinventing themselves, in order to create new work or anything like that. But what we do have the luxury of is giving ourselves the grace to break down when we need to. We have to give ourselves that space and that grace. And if it means that your traditional job, the job where somebody else is in charge of how many hours you work, if you have to call out with the flu, call out with the flu. They don't need to know what you're really suffering from. They're not going to ask you for a doctor's note. So it's super important that you learn how to take care of yourself before worrying about how other people are going to handle it, how other people are going to deal with it, how other people are going to react to it, what they're going to think of you.
That is very powerful, powerful stuff. Thank you for sharing that. I truly appreciate it.
You're welcome. So it took me a while to come back from it. But as they say, you got to break down before you can break through. And if your brain needs a breakdown, that is literally the same thing as your body getting sick. It is the same thing as catching a cold. Your brain needs to get better. Give it the space, give it the rest to do what it needs to do so that it can be good for you again. Thank you so much for letting
Thank
me
you.
have this accidental therapy session. But thank you.
No, I think a lot of people will hopefully, will give themselves the space and take a little bit of pressure off to be on all the time and to have this little cute things that they can do to help themselves through the hard times. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you've learned a lot of new strategies. Be sure to check out the notes below this episode for additional resources and tools mentioned in today's show. I would love to keep the conversation going. Share your thoughts and takeaways with me on social media channels wherever you are. And do not forget to tag me. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you, and I will see you on the next episode. If this podcast has helped you even a little bit, please leave a review and subscribe so that we can help spread the message together.